African-American hero, Ms. Zernona Clayton. Ms. Zernona Clayton is the president and CEO of the Trumpet Awards Foundation. She created the Trumpet Awards 19 years ago. In 1965, Ms. Clayton left Chicago and traveled down to Georgia to work with Dr. Martin Luther King. And she's traveled extensively with Coretta Scott King. In 1966, she worked with the Atlanta doctors to force desegregation in hospitals in Atlanta. And it led to a broader program across the country to allow African American doctors to participate in mainstream practices. In 1991, she wrote a autobiography called I've Been Marching All the Time. In 1968, she was the first African American female to host her own show in the South. She's worked all around the world promoting racial justice and civil rights. She is a visionary, a true humanitarian, and if you haven't seen the Trumpet Awards, please take a look at it. It was just recently on Detroit television. For 20 years, she's been highlighting African American achievement, showing the best and the brightest of the African American community. When we couldn't get on the Oscars, we can get a Trumpet Award. This lady is truly a civil rights icon. So join me, please, in welcoming Ms. Zernona Clayton to Detroit.
Mr. Mayor, I brought a check, but Kid Rock presented it for me. To you, Mr. President, and to the mayor and congressional delegation, and all of the wonderful people who put on this event. I thought I had traveled everywhere. I thought I had seen everything. But this is a sight to behold. Detroit, you are wonderful. I told the president that for years I would read and see the description of this dinner and hoped one day to be here. So tonight is like a dream come true for me. I brought with me our adopted son and daughter from Las Vegas, Dr. and Mrs. Anthony Pollard, and our cousins here in Detroit, Mr. and Mrs. Chris Allen. I also am happy to have with me my husband, who was born in Flint, Michigan. And as a little boy, a young man, I should say, he shined shoes with one of your illustrious judges, the Honorable Louis Simmons. So they started out shining shoes together, and they're both now judges. So I want to recognize a man who's important in my life, Judge Paul Brady. Would you stand? After Paul became a judge, it was his great aunt, Lucinda Todd, in Topeka, Kansas, who spearheaded Brown versus the Board of Education. And it was from that moment that he was inspired to do something with the NAACP. So when he got his first job, he bought a lifetime membership to the NAACP. So we are all supporters and appreciators for the work you do in the NAACP. I am so thrilled to be here. with my friend, the congressman, your speaker for tonight. And so many times I feel the love that Dr. King had for your city. He came here many times and had such praise for this city. So it's in his spirit that I'm here in Detroit, and for the work, Reverend, that you do, and all of the great people in this city, I am delighted to have accepted your invitation. And a lot of people say when they get awards that this is to my mother, my neighbor, the children, and I want you to know this is for me. I want this.
It's heavy. It's heavy. Bless your heart. Bless your heart. And the award reads, presented to Zonona Clayton for your courage, your spirit, and your sacrifices. We thank you, Reverend Wendell Anthony and Interim Director Donnell White, the James Weldon Johnson Lifetime Achievement Award. Thank you, Ms. Clayton, for what you've done for us. I want everybody to know that we are right on time. We had the biggest dinner in the world, and we do it in the shortest period of time. And we still have the best to come, that's as we hear from Congressman John Lewis, icon of the civil rights movement. And because this is so significant, we just could not have him come here and not have those significant others to acknowledge his presence and to bring greetings. And I want Wayne County Executive Robert Ficano, if he would come now. He has a special greeting from the citizens of Wayne County to welcome Congressman John Lewis to our city and to a county. County Exec, Wayne County, Bob Ficano. Bob?
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. No, better than that. Good evening, everyone. You know, I want to welcome you to Wayne County. You know, we are the home of organized labor. We are the home to the largest NAACP dinner. And we are home to those that know that we are on the front line fighting for what is right and what is just. And here in Wayne County, I'd like you to know that we are the most diverse county in the state of Michigan, if not the Midwest. So, some have questioned whether we need the NAACP. Well, I can tell you what, and I think you just saw, this isn't a reality show, but when the President of the United States, that has already been in office for 2 years, has to prove he's an American, yes, there's still a lot of work that we have to do. So welcome to Wayne County, Detroit, with our partnership that we have, and you'll see that the struggle will continue on, and we will continue to fight for that struggle.
Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for your presence. I want to thank all of those who've worked with us, our dais introducers, all our volunteers. I want to thank Sean Robinson for flying back here to be here tonight from LA. You need to know she's an Emmy Award winner, journalist. She just recently won the Dove Real Beauty Award, working with young girls and self-esteem. She has a book, Exactly As I Am. She is the host of Access Hollywood. She is a Detroiter. She's from Cass Technical High School, and she never forgot where she came from. Thank you, Sean, and thank all of those who helped us tonight. As we prepare for John Lewis, it's important to know who is in the house. In his book, The March for Civil Rights, Dr. Benjamin Lawson Hooks wrote, and if you're exiting the room, please do so quietly so that we might hear and acknowledge with respect our very special guest. Dr. Benjamin Lawson Hooks
wrote in 1983 that we celebrated the 20th anniversary of the legendary March on Washington, D.C. for freedom and justice. As a matter of fact, this year they're celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Freedom Riders. And you can see John Lewis and others on Oprah Winfrey's show this coming Wednesday as she memorialized the Freedom Riders who rode those buses and who fought for us in 1961. John Lewis, as Dr. Hooks wrote, on that 20th anniversary for freedom and justice, that march propelled Dr. King to international status as an orator and made Martin King Jr. a household name. Dorothy Height and John Lewis are the only two survivors of the Big Seven, the group that conceived and organized the 1963 March on Washington. The Big Seven included A. Philip Randolph, head of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters; Roy Wilkins, executive director of the NAACP; James Farmer, head of the Congress of Racial Equality; Whitney Young, executive director of the Urban League; Martin King Jr., head of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference; Dorothy Height, president of the National Council of Negro Women; Bayard Rustin, executive assistant to Mr. Randolph; and John Lewis, head of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. They were the movers and shakers, the fabled, the famous, and fabulous persons who conceived and directed the 1963 March on Washington, which forever changed the landscape of America. They helped to change the guard. Now it is up to us to continue to guard the change. Considered by many one of the most courageous persons the civil rights movement ever produced, John Lewis has dedicated his life to the protection and projection of human rights and civil liberties. John Lewis moved us towards what he and Martin King call the beloved community. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi has called him the conscience of the U.S. Congress. Our speaker tonight reflects the struggle of the past, the achievement of the present, and the fate of our future. I will not detail all of the awards and significant tributes that John Lewis has won, for they are too many and too vast. Yet it is important to note that he was born the son of sharecroppers outside of Troy, Alabama. He grew up on his family farm. He attended segregated public schools in Pike County, Alabama. As a young boy, he was inspired by the words of Martin King Jr. that he heard on radio broadcasts. In those historic moments, he made a decision to become a part of the civil rights movement where he has remained through this very hour. John Lewis was instrumental in organizing sit-ins, bus boycotts, and nonviolent protests in their fight for freedom and justice and racial equality. In 1961, he joined several of the Freedom Riders. He was 21 years of age. He was one of 13 original Freedom Riders. There were 7 whites and 6 blacks. He has been arrested over 41 times for us. He has endured brutal beatings by angry mobs for us. He suffered a fractured skull at the hands of Alabama state troopers and police for us. He's been attacked by dogs for us. He led a march of 600 people in Selma, later to be known as Bloody Sunday, on March 7, 1965, for us. He was nearly beaten to death in Montgomery as they knelt to pray for us. Before they could take him to the hospital, John Lewis went on national television, still bloody, still bleeding, still beaten, but not bowed, saying to the President of the United States, Lyndon Johnson, that you must intervene in Alabama. Beloved, to the young people in our audience, when you see this man, you are looking at living history. To the grown folks who are in our audience, when you see this man, you must remember our history. To those yet unborn who ain't in the audience, we must tell them to make some new history. When the first African American president presented John Lewis The Presidential Medal of Freedom Award this year, it came after he had stood on the stage at the inauguration, being the only living speaker from the rally at the march in Washington. The President of the United States gave him a commemorative photograph. He said on the photograph, as he signed his name, he wrote these words: "Because of you, John," Barack Obama. Because of you, John, Barack Obama. Well, ladies and gentlemen, because of John Lewis, Mr. Obama is now president and Michelle Obama is now first lady. Because of you, John Lewis, Eric Holder is now the first African-American U.S. Attorney General. Because of you, John Lewis, Sonia Sotomayor is now on the Supreme Court. Because of you, John Lewis, we can eat where we want to, live where we choose to, drive where we want to, vote like we must do, hold elective office like we're entitled to, quarterback football teams, own basketball teams, buy and own television networks. Because of you, John Lewis, our children can see themselves not only as athletes, but as presidents, as congressmen and women, as UN ambassadors, as Secretary of State, as governors and senators. Because of you, John Lewis, spilling your blood, many of us did not have to spill our own blood. Thank you, John Lewis, for sharing your own blood. Thank you, because we know that the blood will never, ever lose its power. Thank you for not only crossing the bridge, but being our bridge to a better America. We are victorious today because of the battles you fought yesterday. Our speaker tonight, the Honorable Congressman, freedom fighter, icon, blood shedder from the 5th District of Atlanta, Georgia, the Honorable John R. Lewis.
Good evening. Good evening. Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Chief County Executive, my good congressional colleagues and friends, Senator Levin, Senator Stabenow, Congressman Conyers, Congressman Hanson Clark, and to all of the honorable elected officials, I'm delighted, very happy, and very pleased to be here. You don't have to worry. I won't be long. I won't be long. But I just want to tell you, I'm happy to be here. I have a lot of relatives in the city of Detroit. Brothers, nephews, nieces, cousins. Hundreds and thousands of people left Alabama and came to this great city to work. And I want to say, Mr. Mayor, and to the congressional delegation, thank you for taking them in. Thank you so much. I love coming here. It's a wonderful place. And I said to you, don't give up. Don't give in. Don't give out. Keep the faith and keep your eyes on the prize.